tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal, it's hit him on the pad, he's out! Lions gone, New South Wales are 9 down! Onto Sydney Road, and it hit a car! Oh, I think it's hit a car! What a way to bring up your 50!
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menners, and joining me tonight is Damien Watson. Damien, how are you?
I'm good, but probably not as bountifully happy as you are, Menners. I'll tell you what, you can see the Cheshire cat-like grins on our screens as soon as we started the podcast. We're a couple of very happy Australians, aren't we?
Very, very happy. Since we last spoke, Australia have gone 2-0 up in the Ashes. It has been glorious so far, and hopefully in Adelaide next week, Australia can retain the urn and go 3-0 up in the Ashes. I want 5-0. I'm calling for it. I want English blood. So let's see it. So big show tonight. Look, big show today. Look, whatever. Lots to talk about. So lots of Ashes news and some domestic cricket news. The WBBL finals are on at the moment. And can you believe it? The Big Bash starts this Sunday. So we are hitting peak cricket season. But this is the longest running cricket podcast in Australia. So you are going to get all the information you need right here. Damien, did you enjoy the second test?
Oh, absolutely. It was great to watch. It was fantastic to see the result as well from an Australian point of view. Good crowds at the Gabba by the looks of it as well, Menners. I think that day-night concept is fantastic. The Queensland public got around it, and I think Australia took full use of it. And wasn't there a lot of criticism, particularly from former players of England, Menners? I looked at that. I watched the entire Darren Gough interview on TalkSport Radio the other day where he got stuck into obviously Brendan McCullum and also the playing group, the lack of preparation. So Jeff Boycott, he was very, very cutting with some of his comments, wasn't he, in the lead up, saying they had their heads up their backside. So, yeah, it's been an interesting week.
Oh, the fallout has been huge. But let's start with the big news. Josh Hazlewood has been ruled out of the summer, so he won't play at all in these Ashes. And I mean, you have to question his future at test level. He's almost 35. He's played 76 tests. He has 295 test wickets. But really, most of the recent summers have been injury plagued for him. I think there was one summer recently through where he played most of it. But apart from that, he's barely got through a summer. And look, I don't think he'll be retired or retire anytime soon, especially not on 295 test wickets. But you have to imagine it's going to be pretty hard to see him playing a big role in this 5-test series moving forward. Maybe he's a bit of a sort of gun you bring in for 1 or 2 test matches. But, yeah, a shame he's out for the Ashes. I bet the English batters will be breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah, he's definitely close to the end, isn't he? It's interesting, isn't it? Because with the narrative coming in, I think a lot of the conversation was about Pat Cummins, and we'll touch on him shortly as well, because obviously there's a lot of news around him now. But yeah, with Hazlewood, it was interesting in the lead up. I think we initially thought it would be the first few test matches. Then was he going to be in, out throughout the test series? But do you think some of it was predicated on the fact that we're 2-0 up, Menners? Or like if we're in a desperate stage and he was trying to fight fit to get back, and if things weren't working out from a bowling point of view with Pat Cummins out these first 2 tests, do you think the situation would have been a bit different?
Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like he's got a pretty bad injury. And with the T20 World Cup in February, now that's Hazlewood's focus. So he'll want to be available for that. So happened on one day. We lost Hazlewood in the morning, and then in the afternoon, things kind of even up because Mark Wood was ruled out for the rest of the Ashes. And, you know, what a big build-up for nothing, Damien. I mean, the English, they talked about bringing their fast bowlers here. Mark Wood was bowling in a tent in Northern England, getting ready for the Ashes tour, and he bowled 10 overs in Perth, and that's it. He's not going to play a role again. And the difference, I think, for Australia and England is the bowlers coming in just aren't of the caliber in the English squad. They don't have the backup. Australia's got some really good fast bowling depth, and Mark Wood out is huge because unlike Australia, who's bringing back Pat Cummins for the next Test match, that means Australia now doesn't have to face Wood bowling clicks. I imagine the top order are going fantastic. So it was, I would say, a much bigger blow for England losing Mark Wood than Australia losing Josh Hazlewood.
Yeah, completely agree, just because there's a greater amount of depth. And I think the warning signs were there early, weren't they, Menas? There was talk even when England had that one tour match that they had against the England Lions. There were concerns about Mark Wood and his fitness even back then and whether he would even play in the first test. So I'm not entirely surprised that this has happened. And you just have to question whether they've got the depth to cover him going forward as well. So yeah, you're right. It seems like the build-up has been for nothing, but I'm not entirely surprised given the murmurings that were coming out even before the first test.
Yep. So Wood out, all that build-up for nothing. They brought in Matt Fisher to replace in the squad. He's 28. He's played one test. That was in the West Indies in 2022, and he took one wicket there. So a pretty inauspicious start to his test career. So as I said, just not the depth in that English side. Now, Australia have named an unchanged squad for the next test, but they've added Pat Cummins to the squad, and Jai Richardson is going to join the squad, and he's not going to be officially a member of the squad, but you would think there's an eye there to having him available for Boxing Day and Sydney should they need him, especially with Hazlewood now out for the summer. And that's the thing about Australia. They've lost Hazlewood, but they're adding Cummins and possibly Richardson as well. It's a very fortunate position to be in. So not good for the English. They're looking right down the barrel. But it does put a few. Australia performed so well at the Gabba, but how do you fit Cummins and Lyon into the lineup for the Adelaide Test match? Is it as simple as Doggett and Neser miss out and you stick to your pecking order? Because they will pecking order. Despite Neser's 5-wicket haul, Boland is the one behind the big three. So with Hazlewood out, if fit, I think it'll be Stark, Cummins, Boland, and Lyon, and therefore Dog out. But they could get a bit funky and say rest Boland and try and have him for the Boxing Day Test match. But I think with the Ashes on the line and sort of reading between the lines of what McDonald said, that they won't be resting people, I think that's what's going to happen. Neser is out. You see them doing anything else?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think you want to keep that momentum going with Scott Boland. I know he's getting on a bit in age, but he's bowling pretty well. He's shown now that he can adapt to the conditions within Australia. Obviously, there's still question marks as to how effective he is abroad, but he can show that he can bowl well at the various wickets in Australia, and he's in pretty good form at the moment. I think you want to build him up to the Boxing Day Test Menas. We know he loves playing in Melbourne. I just don't see any benefit to having him out for one test and then he's got to come back in and readjust again. So I think you keep him there in that situation. I thought he was very good in Brisbane at various stages. I know the load was shared. And you do feel if Michael Neser has to miss out, you do feel for him a little bit. He knows that Gabba wicket very well. He's played day-night matches there before too. So, I think he did everything he could, and I do feel sorry for him. But you can't really rule out Pat Cummins when he's ready for. It'd be interesting to see what happens. So, yeah, and Boland as well. It'd be interesting to see whether they manage Cummins' minutes and his bowling load as well, given this is his first.
No, so that's the thing.
Happen.
No,
yeah,
no, because that's the one thing they said about him missing out on this recent test is they thought maybe they would have to manage his loads during the test, and he wasn't prepared to do that. And there is a feeling that if you're playing Test cricket, you shouldn't be on managed loads, basically. So yeah, I think Doggett and Neser will miss out. And Boland did crack open the game in Perth, so he deserves his spot, no doubt. Then there is the other question about what to do with his spot. Obviously, Khawaja was ruled out of the last Test match, but Inglis played instead. Do Australia shuffle it around? Do they leave Head and Weatherald at the top? And then if they do that, does Khawaja come in for Inglis, or do you bring Bo Webster in, who can also offer you something with the ball? Now, have a listen to Matt Renshaw on SENQ today.
I think it was the average is 250 batting at 5 in Test cricket. So I mean that's pretty good. I think. I'm not sure. Like obviously these guys who've never played cricket would know better than me, but.
So there's Matt Renshaw, obviously a bit sensitive to all the criticism around Khawaja, all those people who haven't Khawaja dropped, and I think he's referring to Khawaja batting 5 at the SCG test against England, and he made those twin hundreds, and that forced him back into the side permanently, and he took Harris's spot. But I actually think to stick with this top 7. There's no reason to bring Webster in because you don't need the bowling if you've got Cameron Green. Khawaja's done, despite what Matt Renshaw said. And that's the thing. So I really like Matt Renshaw having his opinion and getting out there with that, Damien. But, I mean, you sound like a fucking idiot because you're clearly Khawaja's mate going into bat for him. It's like no one's going to take you seriously. Don't you think? Like, it doesn't come across as like a sensible opinion. It's just like a mate defending him, which is fine. Seriously.
Well, you lose your objectivity, don't you? That's the thing. And this is always going to be the case when you're a close domestic teammate of someone. I mean, at the end of the day, why bring Khawaja in this situation if he's still got back issues? And with the batting the way it's going at the moment, I just don't see any justification for doing it. I think they should stick with Head and Weatherald at the top of the order with the way things are going. I think Weatherald showed some good signs. He hasn't necessarily made a big score or anything, but I think he's done his job so far, or done enough to justify his position, Menners. He looks pretty calm and comfortable out there, bar that first innings of his Test career, or this summer. He hasn't done a lot wrong. So I think you stick with what you got.
Absolutely. And I like Josh Inglis at number 7 because counter-attacking player can score quickly. He's been in and out of the Test side. They need to give him a run at it. So that's why I don't think they should chop and change. He scored that Test 100 on debut. People are asking why is he batting at number 7. That's quite simply to have a left-hander at 6 because you've got basically Smith, Labuschagne, Green, all right-handers. So then it's good to have Carey as a bit of a break from that. And then you go back to Inglis as a right-hander. So I just think they've got to stick with it and they've got to move on from Khawaja. I think it'd be a huge mistake to go backwards. But, Australia are in a good position going into the Adelaide test, Damien. And, people have sort of floated the 2023 series where Australia were 2-0 up, but this doesn't feel like that at all. England are falling apart. And, they're having a beach holiday at the moment in Noosa rather than getting ready for the cricket. Baz McCullum is getting absolutely killed. I want to talk about England, but just quickly before I do, just while on the Australians, Mitch Marsh has retired from first-class cricket, but don't worry, fans, he's still available for the Ashes if we need him. So don't you worry. I'm not bagging Mitch Marsh because he would have just been asked the question or whatever. But he said he's retiring from the Shield. But if they need him for this Ashes, obviously he's available. But that's not going to happen. So the Mitch Marsh dream, the Mitch Marsh fan club's dream of him playing a part of this Ashes is literally gone to ashes. All right, but on to the English. So they are getting killed, and particularly Baz McCullum is getting killed, especially after those comments afterwards where he felt they were overtrained in the lead up to the second test. And the problem is he just comes across as arrogant, Damien. I mean, this whole English team, but especially Baz. And I always go back to that Lord's 2023 test when he wagged his finger at the Aussies. But you have to say he's a pretty unlikable guy.
I didn't mind him when he was a player, Metters, to be honest with you. I didn't mind his vivaciousness as a player. It's different when you're a coach, though, isn't it? I think there's a different level of responsibility. I mean, he's adopting his style, and you know, you got to take the criticism. If you're going to be following a style with such conviction, you got to take the criticism when it backfires. Yeah, I think they have come across as arrogant in this series. There's no doubt about that in the media. And that over-prepared comment was one of the weirdest comments that I've heard in recent times, Menas. They played one tour match against their own reserve team, basically, in the lead up to this series. To me, I know there's a big schedule and they've got to play different formats of the game, but to say that they were over prepared in the lead up is ridiculous in my view. You can never be over prepared. You can overwork yourself, whether it be mentally or physically, but over prepared, I'm not sure about that.
And it didn't look like a team that looked like a team that was shit, not a team that was tired. And if they were over prepared, that's your fault, fucking McCullum. So either way, you've stuffed up. So you can't have it both ways. Now, I just want to put up this tweet for those watching, and I'll read it out. This is from Jason Gillespie. Now, this tweet has now been deleted, but it says, I am not sure if any coach in the history of professional sport has been given the amount of rope Brendan McCullum has. Now, this is from Jason Gillespie. He got a lot of replies to this tweet saying, oh, look at you having a go at a fellow professional coach. And then for some reason, Jason Gillespie deleted this tweet. But, you know, that's a pretty solid crack there from Jason Gillespie. And I listened to his podcast, and, you know, I think there's a feeling that I started it on this podcast, but if they get towed up here in Australia, that McCullum's going to get the sack. And clearly this his attitude rubs up other coaches the wrong way. I mean, Gillespie obviously frustrated that the amount of rope Brendan McCullum's been given, and they haven't got the results. I mean, England had a really good start to his reign at test level, but then recently they've won about 50-50 of their matches. They've lost a lot of stinkers. His record doesn't match up with his arrogance. Like, you can be that arrogant if you're Viv Richards and you've got a team that goes around the world. If you're Virat Kohli, you can't be that arrogant if your team can't win anything.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You got to back up. What's the old saying? If you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk, Menners, and they haven't been able to do that. There's still time for them to recover. You just don't see it happening necessarily in this series. Still technically time to recover, but yeah, I think, well, how often have we seen over the journey, you know, you go back to 2013-14, Menners, and the results there for England, how bad that summer was, how that had a ripple effect in terms of their structure and certain players and coaches, etc. You know, the consequences for their futures. I think we're going to have if we have a similar result here, we're going to have a similar result. When I say the similar result, I mean for the series itself, we're going to have a similar result in terms of casualties from a cricketing point of view. I do hope, though, Menners, that it's handled with a bit more sensitivity and tact than, you know, the Graham Thorpe situation was a couple of years ago. I know that with Brendan McCullum in this situation, to a degree, he's made a rob for his own back with some of the comments he's made. But, you know, if they do end up sacking him, hopefully there's a bit of tact to it as well, because, just keeping Graham Thorpe's situation in mind. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if Brendan McCullum has the same sort of mental health challenges that Thorpe had,
true.
But doesn't come across that way. Yeah, absolutely. But I want him fired, so I have no sympathy for him. Like, after what he did to us, the way he wagged his finger, the way he turned the crowd on us. I mean, he deserves no sympathy. Like, he never credits the opposition for playing well. There was no credit to Australia after Australia's performance. I mean, they're just arrogant pricks, and they're going to get their comeuppance. So, yeah.
Do you think they were doing that to send a message to their own players, I suppose? Maybe, like with the comments that Stokes made, for instance, was he maybe just making these... I know he came across as arrogant, but I'm trying to look into the mindset, his own mindset here. Was he trying to send a message to his own players and to go and bat for them and stand up for them and I guess to show an element of toughness? Or, you know, do you think it just backfired on him?
I think Stokes is just pissed off. I think he's just pissed off, frustrated, and he knows his reputation is on the line. That's what I think. And I don't think he thinks too deeply about this stuff. I don't think he's a deep thinker, to be honest. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Then we'll be back with some great stats from the last test match. You're listening to the Get Unfiltered Cast. I'm Menace. I'm with Damien Watson. Australia at 2-0 up in the Ashes after 6 days of cricket. So the summer of fun has begun beautifully. It is the summer of Stark. I was watching highlights of the 13-14 Ashes today. Not a highlight, and they replay whole days on Cricket Gold. So I had that on. And what amazed me was, there's still quite a few of the players still playing. Warner's still playing, Smith, Lyon, even Siddle's still playing. But I wondered if Mitchell Stark have the same summer Mitchell Johnson had and take, high 30s in the wickets, maybe break that magical 40 wicket threshold. He does wane sometimes towards the end of summers, which is understandable because it's just a huge physical workload. But I did wonder, can we get another, a Stark echoing those Johnson performances in 2013-14?
I don't know. I don't have that feeling necessarily. I think it could be as dominant in terms of the overall landscape, and we've seen that over the last few times that England have come over here. But I don't know if it has that same ruthlessness about it. I think it's been a bit more clinical, Menace, when you look at the fast bowling performances as opposed to the ruthlessness of Johnson, Harris, etc. I don't know. I just feel like there's a different feel about it.
Yeah, I don't think Stark is quite as scary as Johnson because Johnson has that slingshot action, so it's probably a little bit harder to pick up. And he was genuinely dangerous in that series. So memories. All right, some stats from the last Test match, just to underline how bad England are. This was England's 17th consecutive Test in Australia without a win. They last won a Test match in Australia at the SCG in January 2011. It was an awful feeling. That's why I want Australia to win 5-0. And since then, England have lost 15 matches and drawn 2. They are now level with the West Indies and Pakistan for the longest streak without a win in Australia. Only New Zealand have had a longer winless streak, which was at 18 games. So, I mean, that just underlines how pathetic they are here, Damien. I mean, Australia went there in 2023, 2-2. 2019, 2-2. 2015, 3-1 in the end. In 2013, it was close. I mean, maybe 2013 was 3-1 and 2015 was 3-2. But either way, Australia wins games over there. Like, that is pathetic. Joe Root has played 16 here, never won one. I mean, that's just an unenviable record.
Well, it's interesting, Menace, because when you think of the chasm of English cricket in recent times and the absolute depths of despair, you often think back to maybe the teams of the late 90s, early 2000s, Menace. But even they won the odd Test match here in Australia. I mean, you go back to 94, 95, they beat us in Adelaide in that Test match. I think it was the Australia Day Test match. 98, 99, they beat us in Melbourne. And
that's right.
They went too far away in Sydney. Even 02-03, they beat us in Sydney, even though it was a dead rubber. So it's interesting, isn't it? When you think about the depths of despair of English cricket, I don't know if you would say this is the worst England team. I don't know if this is the worst England team, but in terms of performances in Australia, this is the worst era, this last 10 or so year period.
Well, I guess we should just say the Ashes is not over. I mean, England can win 3 in a row,
True.
So it's not over.
Up to this
point, they have been, and I'm going one way. Now, going into this talk, there was talk about why do they play a pink ball Test match in the Ashes? Well, there have been some stunning viewing figures to come out for it. Now, Damien, listen carefully because you're my arbiter. So 7 have put out the national reach was 2.8 million. The national audience was 1.27 million, and that's up 28% year on year. And the Gabba Test reach over 8 million people across 7 and 7+. And the average national audience was 1.21 million, which is up 6% on the first test and 36% on the second test last year. That sounds pretty good to me.
Very, very good figures. The average audience of when you consider what TV audiences are like today, man. And look, I know it's not the biggest sporting TV audience. I mean, the figures for State of Origin and the AFL and NRL grand finals are far bigger. But to get an average audience over a long period of time, you've got to remember an entire session, Menners, is the equivalent of an entire game of AFL and NRL. And don't forget also, you look at other events like the Melbourne Cup, that's only a couple of minutes really when the main race is on. So that's a pretty good effort to get those sort of figures in this current climate when not a lot of people, or not as many people, watch free-to-air TV in general, Menners. And you've got to take into account the digital and the online audiences as well, because a lot of these arms like Foxtel have KO, 7 have 7 plus. People do consume it, not as much, but people do consume it in that way as well.
Absolutely. For the Foxtel group was telling TV Black Box Online that session 3, day 4 of the second test became the most watched session for an individual test day across Kayo Sports. So, that broke the record. Coming into this summer, everybody was saying this is going to be the biggest summer ever, and it is true. Cricket is absolutely killing it in this country, which is great to see. This Ashes has captivated the nation, as it should. So you turn on the news and there's sports reporters on the beach in Noosa with the English team behind them and shots of them at a bar. Like, we do hound them when they're here. Like, and trust me, no sympathy, because they do the same to the
correct
this when you're in England, because at least if you're getting hounded on Noosa, you're in paradise, whereas if you're over in shitty fucking England getting hounded, it's not so pleasant.
All the tabloids there as well, and you look at the way they hounded Shane Warne when he was going through his divorce matters. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It happens either side. You take give and take.
Yeah. So hello to all our English listeners. Thanks very much for tuning in. There's been so much correspondence during the Ashes, and I will definitely get to some Ashes mailbag episode, but a big response to all the content. Thank you everybody for tuning in. A lot of support. I'll be doing, daily episodes after the Adelaide test live on YouTube and also on the podcast feed. Got a new, obviously, an Ashes preview coming up next week with Gav on Monday as we look to the Adelaide test. But it's been so exciting, Damien. I mean, everybody is locked in for this series, and I can't wait for the next 3 tests. And even if Australia win 5-0, it's still because there's a sport in watching England just fall apart.
Well, that's right. It's interesting, man. Who have we got just off the top of your head next summer? Do you know? Because
New
we've
Zealand.
had India last. Yeah.
So we've got New Zealand just for 4 tests.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a bit of a come down as a result of that? Because we had a great summer against India where it was very absorbing cricket last summer, and then everyone gets absorbed by the Ashes and there's a bit of hype around it. Do you think there'll be a big come down next summer? Although New Zealand have been all right in this format.
Definitely, but I think there is a little natural rivalry between the Australian and the Kiwis. But yeah, definitely there will be a little bit of a come down, and it's usually a good opportunity for the Big Bash to shine. Well, that's a good cue to get into all the T20 news. So get your Ashes merchandise. I've got my Johnny Bairstow Keep Walking t-shirt on, but the link is in the episode notes. All right. So while this has been going on, Damien, under the cloak of the Ashes, the W along, and it came to a thrilling finish. I briefly mentioned this the other day, but it went down to the last game, which was played at 10:40 a.m. on a Sunday morning, which might be good for the TV. Maybe a few people flicked it on. There wasn't a big crowd at North Sydney. I spoke about this before. They're just trying to shoehorn it in, and because the Ashes are on, clearly the TV don't want to clash between the WBBL and the Ashes. But I don't know. I almost think you've just got to pin your ears back and say we're just going to play the WBBL at a day. Anyway, exciting finish. It came down to the strikers playing the Sixers at North Sydney Oval. Winner basically went through to the final. Loser missed the finals, and the Sixers ended up winning by 1 run. The game of the tournament so far, and that meant so the Hurricanes finished on top with 7 wins, and the Sixers finished on second with 13 points. The Perth Scorchers in 3rd place on 12 points, and then the Melbourne Stars in 4th place. We'll get to the Stars Scorchers who played off last night, but the Hurricanes have looked good. They host the final this Sunday. And, what a great double the Canes could do. They won the BBL last summer, and this Hurricanes team looks destined for WBBL honours.
And much deserved as well, Menners. I mean, that Tasmanian core group, when I speak about domestic cricket, I'm referring to the WNCL. A lot of those players in Tasmania's WNCL lineup have in the past or are still part of the Hurricanes lineup as well, Menners. So, they've had a lot of success in the one-day format. They're now finally potentially going to get that success in the T20 format. Got the likes of Molly Strano, who's been there for a few years now. I know she's moved back to Victoria, but she took a fifer during the season. Elise Villani, who's still going pretty well. Lizelle Lee's a big hitter. They've been a core part of Tasmania's lineup for quite a while now. So because they've been so settled and stabilised, I think that's been a key element behind their success. They know each other very well. Just in relation to your point before about the 10:40 Sunday game, look, I agree it's probably not the best time necessarily for a match, although, people do wake up later on a Sunday morning, Menners, and I think it works out all right. But I don't think they have much other choice at this time of year if they're going to schedule it. And I know because of the one-day World Cup, they had to do it. You don't really have much of a choice if it's on at the same time as the Ashes. There's no way. I know you said pin the ears back, but there's no way you would, in any rational state of mind, try and pit a WBBL game against a session of the Ashes, because people will just follow the Ashes, Menners.
Yeah, well, I guess TV-wise, I think you would still get a big crowd. I think the crowd would still go. But
yeah, TV is what matters. We know that.
I know. It's just unfortunate with the timing. Like, I'm just really disappointed this WBBL hasn't had any. Speaking of, stinkers, so the Brisbane Heat didn't win a game all WBBL. 10 games, 9 losses, 1 no result. The other teams, like the Sydney Thunder, Adelaide Strikers, 3 games, and the defending champions, the Renegades, 10 games. So it was pretty close, apart from the Heat, who just absolutely nothing could go right. They lost a couple of close ones and a forgettable season.
Quite ironic, isn't it, Menners? Because for a long time in the WBBL, you would say up until this season, they were the most consistent team. They were always around the top, even if they didn't win the title. They were always very competitive. So, yeah, it's been a big change-up. Probably a couple of factors. You mentioned they lost a couple of close games. There were a couple of no results from memory as well due to rain. Jemmy Rodriguez, who was their big international player and has been, I think, for a couple of years now. I think she had to leave earlier than expected from memory. They lost Laura Harris, who was a big loss at the start of the season. Obviously, she moved elsewhere. So that impacts things. Charlie Knott didn't quite come on. They moved Georgia Redmayne down to the middle order, which was an odd decision. I thought you would have kept her at the top. But anyway, there were a few interesting elements there. But, forgettable season for the Brisbane Heat. You mentioned some of those other teams. I mean, the Renegades are defending champs. They looked like they were going to make the finals probably halfway through the season, man, as they just tailed off late and didn't quite get their act together in time. But a mid-table finish for them. Same, Strikers were sort of a bit hit and miss. They probably came on a little bit late. But, yeah, it's been an interesting season. I guess we could segue into the Perth Scorchers v Melbourne Stars game. Did you catch that? I wonder if that had good TV figures, given it was on a Tuesday night with not much competition.
Well, actually, the finals have clear air, which is good. Just before we get onto that, so at the end of the regular season, Meg Lanning was the leading run scorer, 430 runs. So great tournament for her, and obviously leading the Stars into the finals. George wicket taker and player of the tournament with 19 wickets and 277 runs. So a great all-round performance from Georgia Wareham, despite her team not making the finals. So top performance from Wareham at the Renegades. And other news just today, unfortunately, young Sixers star has stress fractures and will miss the finals. So that's a blow for the Sixers. But yes, the Scorchers hosted the Stars in the Eliminator in the WBBL. The winner would play the Sixers on Thursday night. And in the end, the Scorchers were too strong. They made 5 for 173. At one stage, the Stars were 1 for 101, but then they collapsed to be 9 for 145. Beth Mooney was the player of the match with 45. Katie Mack 52. Freya Kemper dashing 35 for the Scorchers, but a disappointing performance from the Stars. Damien, you talk about, say, the Renegades. The Stars started really strongly and they kind of tailed away a bit as well. And, being 1 for 101, Meg Lanning not out, they would have closer than they did, ended up losing by 28 runs. And now the Scorchers will take on the Sixers Thursday night.
Well, I think it just highlights the lack of batting depth there. I mean, outside of Meg Lanning and Amy Jones, they just didn't have enough contributors, and they all just fell away, didn't they, towards the back end? So that was pretty much the difference between the two sides. But yeah, I think ultimately the Scorchers, it was a competitive total that they set. I thought the Stars were a big chance early on, but yeah, just not enough batting depth there, Menners. And you're right, they did fall away, the Melbourne Stars, late in the season, a couple of late losses. It looked as if at one stage they were going to finish second behind the Hurricanes with a couple of matches to go. But then they really fell away, and they're probably lucky to sneak into the finals in the end. So a few lessons learnt there. Clint Mackay, of course, involved this year. I think they've gone a step better, or a couple of steps better than where they were this time last year under Jonathan Batty, where they were last on the table. So there's been improvement there at the very least, considering they did lose a couple of players as well to the Renegades.
Yeah. I mean, it was a close tournament. Sixers could have finished fifth if they lost the final game, or second. So, it was such a close run tournament right to the end. All the teams performed pretty well up until this point. So the Hurricanes on Saturday night host the that's on 15 p.m. Damien, I've got a bad situation. It's not a bad situation, but unfortunately I can't go to the Sixers Scorchers game because my son is getting a prize at speech night at school. And he said to me, Dad, you don't have to. I have to go. I mean, these are moments you can't miss as a dad.
Yeah.
So I will be following the Sixers Scorchers game on my phone. I would love to be there. I hate missing these things, but my son will be out of school, so cherish these moments while you've got them. You don't often see a kid getting presented an award. So unfortunately, I won't be there.
It's all right. You just sneak it on with the sound on mute, Menners, on your phone. That's what you'll do. I know what you'll do.
Absolutely. Or I'll definitely be checking the score. I will say that can be worse than not going. Like if your kid clocks you watching the cricket at one of those, they get so embarrassed. You're better off just not going.
You wait for the moment, because I imagine there's a whole heap of awards, right? So you obviously tune in for when he's going to get the award, but I imagine there's a lot of stuff that's probably irrelevant to you at those awards nights, and you can tune in then.
I'm more working on an idea of sitting right at the back, and if he gets the award to watch the cricket. So we'll see. And then it's a double whammy. So the WBBL final is this Saturday night at 7:15 p.m. I'm sure my girlfriend is going to be thrilled with us watching that on the Saturday night. So anyway.
Well, do you like the Saturday night final? Because in the past, they've had it on Friday nights. They've had it on Sunday after. They've had a lot of day finals over the journey as well, haven't they? They had a Sunday afternoon final last year. It was meant to be Sunday night, and I think they changed it to an afternoon game. The Saturday night work well, do you think?
Yeah, I think it does work well. It doesn't work well as Sunday night because on Sunday night the BBL starts.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying in terms of a day of the week. Yeah.
Sunday night would be better, but the BBL's got that because they jam everything in, as we've discussed. So WBBL finishes Saturday night. Then, as I said, the BBL starts this Sunday night. Bit of news. So the first game is Perth Scorchers hosting the Sydney Sixers at 7:15 p.m. So cracking game to start things off. The Hurricanes, Thunder were the losing finalists. Just for sort of context, the IL T20 in the United Arab Emirates is going on at the moment. So there are some players coming after that. Spencer Johnson has been ruled out of the summer Brisbane Heat, so that's a big blow. They have Shaheen Shah Afridi, Damien, but a real blow for Spencer Johnson, obviously pretty much ending his chances of playing in the T20 World Cup for Australia. And he's a bit of a draw card, so shame he's not there.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's one of those things, a bit like the BBL as well, Menners, when it looked as if we're going to have Ravi Ashwin as well. So I think it will adapt, though, regardless. But, yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yeah. Nick Maddinson has signed with the Sydney Thunder. His story about suffering cancer was publicised recently, so great to see him back playing for the Thunder. Bubba Azam is here. Rizwan is here. So a lot to be excited about with this big bash. I'm really looking forward to it, Damien. I think once the Ashes are over, it will be shining brightly on the BBL, and there are a few stars there. Obviously, no Ashwin is a big blow, but a lot of big name Pakistani players here, and could be exciting. And then Smith and a few other players set to go back to the BBL. Yeah, a lot to look forward to. All right, let's take our final break. Then we'll be back to wrap up the Shield game, the Shield cricket round, and the Aussie game played, and can't let it go. You're listening to the podcast. I'm Menas. I'm with Damien. And since our last show, the final round of the Shield was played before the Big Bash, and Victoria have finished on top with 5 wins from 6 games. So they've basically got 1 foot in the final now, which is rounds to be played. But then the big news from that last round was New South Wales beating Queensland by 341 runs, with Sam Constas scoring 116 and 53. So a great return to form for the former Test opener to the year in the Shield, but that'll really give him a boost of confidence heading into the Big Bash. Who'll be playing for the Thunder, and a much needed win for New South Wales. Pretty close run ladder with Queensland on second, the 3rd spot, New South Wales 4th spot, Tasmania and WA, but not a lot separating the rest of the teams apart from Victoria. But yeah, really good stuff from Constas, and great to see him back in the runs. And that's his 4th first class. And he's a talent, Damien. I mean, when he gets going, he makes big scores.
That's right. He's probably wishing he did it a little bit earlier in the summer. But I think now that do you reckon there's an element, because now the pressure is off, because we're already in the midst of the Ashes series, man, as in selection's not weighing on his mind? Do you think all of a sudden he's played with a bit of a freer mind? Also, he's naturally improved and learnt a few things about the art of Test cricket as well. Has all of that come together and been the reason behind his renaissance?
Yeah, absolutely. And also he just played. So he played in the West Indies where no one scored above 50. When he came back, he went over and played in Perth on a stinker. Then he played against Scotty Boland. So that's not going to be easy. We've seen what Scotty Boland has done to the English. So he's been through a few tough examinations. The year I like about him, he's come out the other side. I mean, he's clearly a kid with a strong character. He's got a good outlook, and you want players that can score hundreds. You see with Travis Head, if you can score 100, you can win a game for your team, and that's what Constas can do. And great to see him performing well. So that was the big news from the Shield round. And your Victorian mob, Damien, you'd have to say 5 wins from 6 games. That's very impressive. Chris Rogers has got this team humming.
That's right. And they've got the core group of players that have been developed over the last few years, as Mitch Perry's been bowling very well. Blake McDonald was fantastic, a former New South Wales player, as he's really come into his own for Victoria. So there was a couple of good players that really did stand out in that Shield game. Shows there's a bit of depth there for Victoria. There were some interesting moments. I think WA, they almost pushed it to a draw. Victoria got there pretty much towards the back end of the 4th day, because day 3, unfortunately, which was the one day I was on the commentary team, as most of it was impacted by rain. So they did manage to get the job done just in time in day 4. Shout out to Sam Whiteman, who scored a century against the flow when WA were in trouble. They lost Mitch Marsh, what turned out to be his final innings for WA, for 4 after he only scored 9 in the first innings. So he knew he was gone too when he skied one out towards fine leg. But Sam Whiteman made a century in the second innings against some tough opposition, and also in a pressurised situation. A player that's, aside from maybe certain instances, you go back to 2020 during the COVID hub, his name was sort of on the selection lips, but has often been overlooked. And I know he didn't have the best start to the Shield summer this time round, but I thought it showed great character. So shout out to Sam Whiteman.
There you go. And yeah, Blake McDonald, I know very well, commentated on a lot of his games at state and even premier cricket level here. So good to see him doing well. Scored in that game, didn't he? So good performance from him as first. All right, last thing before Can't Let It Go. And the bad week for England continued with Australia A beating England Lions by an innings and 127 runs. The stars for Australia, Joe 75, Nathan McSweeney, the forgotten man, 226. Big score for him. Bo Webster made 44, Cooper Connolly 88, and Xavier Bartlett 83. Working backwards, just with Xavier Bartlett, it's really good. He's turned himself into a handy lender. I've seen him do well in T20 cricket. And, you know, when we've seen test matches be decided by tail end runs, it's great to see the next generation coming along that can replace the Cummins and the Starks, because we saw without Cummins, you know, when you have 3 number 11s batting 9, 10, 11, it does make a difference. So good to see Bartlett doing well with the bat. But Nathan McSweeney, 226. I don't think he's imminent for a recall to the test side, Damien, but clearly he'll be in that next little run. An impressive score from him, and I think he's a natural replacement for someone like a Steve Smith, or if there's a number 5 spot comes up.
Yeah, I think this was sort of the innings he needed, Menas, because I think after he got dropped, and probably unfairly in many respects, late in 2024, he didn't necessarily respond. I think he had a good big bash innings from memory right after that, but he didn't necessarily respond, even though his side won the Shield title, which goes to his leadership capabilities. He didn't necessarily respond individually all that well throughout the remainder of the Shield summer to really put his name back in the limelight again. He's had a couple of decent innings, but nothing to really write home about. It was good. He was okay for Australia A during the middle of the year when they played against Sri Lanka A. And this was sort of the innings he needed, I think, to really put himself back in the limelight or in the conversation again going forward, because we know he's a good leader as well.
You know, it's really funny. Like a year or two ago, we were all lamenting that no players were knocking the door down and Australian cricket was in a tough spot. Where would this next generation of batters be along? And recently, and to start this season, Nathan McSweeney has started to put performances together. Matt Renshaw scored 3 centuries. Sam Constas is hanging around. Like there's a lot of good cricketers, Weatherald, and there's a little cricket horizon. And you know, I heard Bryce McGain talking, I think, on SEN today, saying that there's a real talented crop of players, that under-19 side that did so well at the World Cup, that the Harry Dixon, Sam Constas year, Marley Beardman, any of them stars as well. So Australian cricket is in a really strong position, and it's evidenced by this Australia A thrashing of the England Lions.
No doubt about that. It didn't really get a lot of coverage, though, I suppose, because the Ashes were on and the Shield was on at the same time. It didn't really get a lot of coverage. Do you think that, I don't know, maybe it's a scheduling thing, maybe they had to put it there, but do you think it should be moved to a different spot, Menas, so it gets a bit of attention? Because it didn't really.
I liked it when the touring side played Australia for the fest, and it was almost like an extra test match. It was a warm-up game for the touring side, but you just don't get that anymore. England weren't going to do that because they, golf to play. So why would they play? Let's get to Can't Let It Go. Let's get on to Can't Let It Go. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. Have you got anything, Damien, to start things off?
Shout out to Sophie Day. You mentioned the Golden Arm before, Menas, in the WBBL. Sophie Day of the Melbourne Stars. She came back after, a season where she was out of form a little bit last season after being the Golden Arm winner a couple of seasons ago, and had a really good season for the Melbourne Stars. I think she was equal second in the amount of wickets taken. So shout out to her, given the Melbourne Stars just got knocked out of the WBBL. And yeah, I just... it would have been nice. I think they did eventually get some sort of stream up, but I would have liked a stream for the Australia A v England Lions game, just to see, even if it was Frogbox or something, Menas, just to see what was going on there, because you can follow the scorecard as it was going. But, given in this era we've got a lot of cricket, even local level, Frogboxed, it would have been nice. But maybe I was looking in the wrong area, so maybe it's on me. Maybe I can't let myself go.
How was your day of commentary?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, there wasn't a lot of cricket, unfortunately, Menners. We in Melbourne, it's funny, the forecast for day 3 of Victoria v WA, I think they were only expecting 0 to 4 mils. I think there was a lot more than that in the end. We didn't even get started until about 2:40 p.m. And then I think they went off halfway through with the remaining time left halfway through. There was a half-hour break due to rain, and then they went off for bad light a couple of times as well, even though the floodlights were on at the MCG, which was a bit odd. Surely you can see at the MCG with probably the biggest floodlights in the country. But anyway, there wasn't a lot. I think they only played about 30-odd overs for the day.
Okay. I imagine you had a lot of party pies. All right, so I can't let it go. My can't let it go is I love the end of the second test with Jofra Archer getting absolutely spanked and then Steve Smith hitting a 6 to win the game. But Ricky Ponting's commentary was gold at the end. So listen, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Shepmates doing their little video. Shout out to the Shepmates. I love their content. But here's Ricky Ponting getting very excited at the end of the second test.
I like it. Jofra's finally come to life. 6 days into the series, when the second test match is gone, he starts chirping. Too late for that, champ. That's what Smithy said to him as well. Bowling quick now, mate, when the game's over. Good on you. And they've all started. Too late, boys. You've had your chance for 4 days. You haven't been good enough. It's too late to start.
Everybody got very excited at the end of that. Ponting got stuck into them. Jared Waitley champed him. How good was that? That, Damien?
Yeah, it was like he was out there, Ricky Ponting. I think he forgot he was commentating and he was playing, I reckon. That was fantastic for a parochial audience.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, that's it for this episode of Cricket Unfiltered. Remember, I'll be back next week with unprecedented Ashes coverage leading into the third test. Australia's seeking to retain the urn before Christmas. Wouldn't that be a beautiful Christmas present for Australians all around the country to see Australia retain the urn before Christmas? Baz and McCullum can be crying. Bass and Stokes can be crying into their Christmas turkey knowing the Ashes already gone. That would be magic. But yeah, remember, like and subscribe. What was that?
That's a new T-shirt idea, crying into the Christmas turkey, Menners. Maybe you should make a late charge for the Christmas merchandise.
Well, if we win the third test, maybe I will. So remember, like and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a review, mates. Buy a T-shirt, leave a comment. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. You can find Damien at Damo_Watts on Twitter. He doesn't really tweet much, so you can go there, but you won't see much. He's not very social media savvy. But I am on social media platforms, so give me a follow, and we'll be back soon.